Most writers quote Stephen King's most famous rule: write with the door closed, rewrite with the door open. But almost all of them misunderstand what it actually means. And if you misunderstand it, you don't just slow down your writing, you quietly make your first draft almost impossible to finish. Hi, I'm Andrea, the founder of Bibisco, the novel writing software downloaded by more than 200,000 writers around the world. And in this video, I want to give you a clearer way to see this Stephen King's rule, so you can finally write your first draft without constantly stopping, second guessing, or losing your place in the story. Stephen King wrote this in On Writing: write with the door closed, rewrite with the door open. It sounds simple, and that's exactly why it gets misinterpreted. Most writers hear this and think, okay, I just need isolation, no distraction, no feedback, so they close the physical door, they stop sharing, they try to protect their writing time, but that's only the surface of the rule. What King is really protecting is not your time, it's your psychological space. The first draft is not supposed to belong to anyone else, not to readers, not to editors, not even to your future self. It belongs only to you and the story as it is forming. And that distinction is much more fragile than it sounds, because most writers don't struggle to close the door in the room, they struggle to close the door in their head. You write a sentence, then you read it again, you adjust a word, then another, you write a paragraph, then you reshape it. You reach the end of a scene, and instead of continuing, you scroll back to improve what you already wrote. It feels responsible, it feels like you are doing a good work, but something subtle is happening. You are no longer writing the story, you are negotiating with it, and that negotiation slowly pulls you out of the draft. This is the inner critic. It's the constant adjustment of what already exists, and it creates a hidden shift. You stop moving forward. King's rule exists to protect movement, not perfection. There's another problem, and this is the part almost no one talks about. There is a second door, and it doesn't come from judgment, it comes from complexity. At some point, your story grows. You have multiple characters, different timelines, subplots that start to intersect, and suddenly, writing is no longer just writing, it becomes remembering. You stop mid-scene because you are not sure about a detail. You try to recall something from chapter 3. You hesitate because you don't want to contradict something you already wrote, so you scroll back, then you read more than you intended, then you adjust something, and without noticing, the door is open again. Not because you dubbed yourself, but because your story no longer fits in your head. This is where many writers misinterpret their struggle. They think they lack discipline, or focus, or clarity, but often the real issue is simpler. They are trying to hold too much at once, and when that happens, even if you want to write with the door closed, you physically can't, because you need to keep checking things. You need to reconnect pieces, you need to rebuild context, so the draft becomes fragmented and slow and heavy. Now, here is the shift that changes everything. But before we move on, if this way of looking at it is resonating with you, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps more writers find these conversations. King's rule is not really about isolation, it's about protecting a state, a very specific state, where you are inside the story, moving forward without interruption. Some writers describe it as flow, others call it immersion. King calls it staying in the dream. And the real problem is not that writers don't understand the rule, it's that they don't have the condition to sustain that state. Because the moment you need to search, verify, remember, or reorganize, you exit the dream, and once you exit, it becomes very hard to re-enter. This is why many first drafts feel exhausting, not because writing is inherently painful, but because the context keeps breaking. You are constantly stepping in and out of the story, and every time you step out, you lose something: continuity, emotion, direction. Now, if you look at King again through this lens, write with the door closed becomes much more precise. It means protect the continuity of the draft, protect your position inside the story, protect forward movement. Once you see it this way, something else becomes clear. This is not just a mindset problem, it's also an environment problem. Because if your writing setup forces you to search for notes, jump between files, scroll through chapters, reconstruct details, then the door will keep opening, even if you don't want it to. And this is exactly the gap most tools leave. They assume writing is just typing, but writing a novel is not typing, it's managing complexity over time. And when that complexity is not contained, you compensate by interrupting yourself. That's the hidden cost. So the real question is not how do I stay focused. The real question is what allows me to stay inside the story without leaving it every few minutes. And this is where bibisco novel writing software changes the experience. Not because it makes writing easier, but because it removes the reasons that make you stop. When you open a chapter in bibisco, you don't have to scroll back to remember where you were. You see the reason of the chapter, what just happened, what the next scene needs, so you continue. When you are unsure about a character detail, you don't leave the draft to search for it. Everything about that character, their background, their evolution, their contradictions, is already structured and accessible in one place, so you don't break the flow. When your story grows and complexity increases, you don't need to reconstruct it in your head. You can see the structure of your chapters, the progression of events, the relationships between elements without stepping outside the writing process. That's the shift. Not a new technique, but a different condition. Because writing a novel is not just about putting words on a page, it's about staying connected to something that is evolving over time. And every interruption breaks that connection. Bibisco reduces those interruptions, not by telling you what to write, but by removing the friction that makes you stop. So the draft can continue, and that's what aligns with King's rule. Not in theory, but in practice. Because closing the door is not something you force yourself to do. It's something that happens when the environment supports it. So if you take one thing from this, let it be this: the first draft is not fragile because of your skill. It's fragile because of interruptions, and most of those interruptions are structural, not emotional. Once you reduce them, writing changes. You move more, you hesitate less, you stay inside the story longer, and over time something very simple starts to happen: you finish. King's rule was never about isolation, it was about protecting continuity. Bibisco was built around this idea. If you want a writing space designed around this way of thinking, you can try Bibisco using the link in the description. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye bye.